India overtaking Japan to become the fourth largest economy in the world. And I'm now joined by senior economic journalist Anil Padmanabhan to discuss India's growth story. Welcome, sir. First of all, India overtaking Japan to become the fourth largest economy in the world is a very major achievement. Your thoughts?
Well, absolutely, Tanvi. I think it's a tremendous achievement for an economy, especially in the circumstances that India has achieved this milestone. Let's not forget that in the last 5 years, beginning with COVID-19 pandemic, the world and India have seen back-to-back economic setbacks in every year. You have the Russia-Ukraine war, you have the US Fed increasing interest rates, you have the conflict in Gulf, and we can just carry on. Despite all this, the fact that the Indian economy continued to grow is remarkable. And we must also keep in mind that it took India 60 years to become a 1 trillion economy in 2007. And in the next 15 years, it has grown it 4 times and more. So it is on a tremendous economic momentum, which is very admirable, and presumably it will be sustained going forward.
Okay. Tell us something more about the factors that have contributed most to India becoming the world's fourth largest economy, and also about the government policies that have played a leading role in this success.
See, Tanvi, if I had to list all the factors contributing to this success, we'll have to do a special show, but I'll try and summarize. See, primarily, government policy in a country like India is very critical. And in this, the government has pursued primarily a very sober and conservative fiscal policy, which created a good macroeconomic environment for the Reserve Bank of India to manage a tight leash on inflation for most of the last 10-15 years. So then, on the other side, you had major advancements on the digital front, particularly with the launch and rollout of Aadhaar, which enabled a fintech revolution, and it enabled direct benefit transfers, which created a complete sea change in social welfare spending in this country. Probably for the first time, this country got value for money as far as social welfare went. It saved the exchequer, this using Aadhaar as the foundation and sewing it up with the bank account, which is Jan Dhan, and the mobile, what they call JAM. This created an economic GPS which allowed the government to target social welfare spending. It saved a staggering 3 lakh crore cumulatively. And then finally, the government worked very hard in making the private sector a legitimate stakeholder in the Indian economy. If you recall, till the dismantling of the license Raj, doing business in India was considered almost a social crime. Look at all our Bollywood movies. Business was always shown in very poor light. But going forward, it is now a legitimate stakeholder, and you can see the entry of private sector in sectors which were traditionally reserved only for the government. Typical example is defense and space. The just concluded face-off with Pakistan showed the success that Indian private sector has demonstrated in creating such a strong architecture for India. So pull all these together, you understand why India has moved forward. So there's been a lot of heavy lifting. We have eradicated abject poverty. I think it's less than 2% now. So which the turn of the millennium, almost 50% of the population was poor. That is 1 in 2 Indians were poor. Today, no longer. So all of this, if you pull together, you begin to understand why this economic story is coming together so good, so fast.
Okay. India is now poised to surpass Germany to become the third largest economy of the world in just a few years. Are there any specific policy steps or steps by the private sector that could speed up this transition?
See, Tanvi, the primary step, it has to be a combo of both the government and private sector. See, the government has to undertake long overdue structural reforms, which has to include the states. And yesterday, the Prime Minister chaired a meeting with the states in the Niti Aayog, in which he has appealed to them to become serious partners in India's future growth trajectory. So presumably they will have taken the message home, and several states have already begun to roll out reforms. But primarily, India has to undertake strong structural reforms to create a better economic environment. Thereby, it will incentivize private sector to invest. So far, they've been reluctant to invest for a host of reasons, but in a good, conducive environment, presumably they will rise to the occasion. So it has to be a combination of both the government and the private sector coming together.
Okay. And are there any major obstacles that India may need to overcome, or economic parameters to especially watch out for in moving to the next level?
Oh, absolutely, Tanvi. I think the biggest challenge India is going to face, unlike, say, China did in the last 2 decades, is the inclement global environment. We can see what's happening around us. After about 70 years of economic prosperity and relative peace, we are now looking at least a decade of turbulence. So the external sector is going to be a constant challenge. Secondly, internally, the politics has to converge. There is often politics for the sake of politics, particularly among the opposition parties. They need to think about India first rather than themselves first. And of course, the structural reforms that I mentioned. And I think all of us are also stakeholders in this economic growth trajectory that India is charting, and we have to become legitimate stakeholders. So to begin with, let's start take small steps, keep our surrounding environments clean, learn to respect public infrastructure. The state of infrastructure in India is no longer what it was even a decade ago. Look at the airports around us and look at the stations, the newly revamped stations all across India. It's not just in the metros. Tier 1, Tier 2 towns are getting new railway stations, which are state of the art. So we as citizens also need to put our little step forward. And if we all come together, I think the progress is assured. There will always be challenges. But I always believe the cup is always half full and never half empty.
Very positive indeed. Okay, do you see India now likely emerging not only as a major investment or manufacturing destination for foreign companies, say like Apple, but perhaps also a major challenger to China in this regard?
See, Tanvi, taking on China is a long journey. It cannot be done overnight. India is taking steps to create a foundation. But I don't think India should worry about China, because investors who are in China need to pull out. And they will not do it abruptly again, because it will disrupt their own business models. So it will happen gradually. We are beginning to see a trickle. We can see the tensions within China and their efforts to slow down India, which suggests that they do see India as a legitimate threat. But India needs to focus inwardly. And we need to get everything right, just like the way we are getting the logistics right. Today, train travel in India is not such a challenge. Thanks to GST, you have seamless movement of goods through the country. The logistics are no longer what it was, pathetic 10 years ago. So all these things are coming together. So India should focus inwards, get its act right, because we are an economy which has long looked inward. It is time we looked outward. And for that, India needs to improve its basic infrastructure, architecture, its approach. And of course, finally, we need a mindset reset. We have to forget about the past, what everyone popularly likes to call the Hindu rate of growth. But those were times, okay, it happened, but that's history. Now, India is on a new growth trajectory. So everyone, including all of us, have to have a mindset reset, and particularly India's private sector.
Okay, India's private sector has to play a role. We have to look ahead, as you say. Thank you very much, Anil Padmanabhanji, for joining us on Lead India News App.